This is Stereoactive Presents. I'm your host, Jeremiah McVay, and in this episode, I'm joined by Charles Hinshaw to discuss the debut film written and directed by Celine Song. Past Lives stars Greta Lee, Teo Yoo, and John Magaro as the three sides of a romantic triangle that spans decades and continents. In just a moment, you'll hear my review of the film, followed by my discussion with Chuck. There are thin and thick lines running through every life. These may run through personal situations or society as a whole. Celine Song's Past Lives explores the intersection of at least a few such lines. There's the sometimes thin line between the platonic and the romantic. Then there are the often thicker lines between times and places that separate moments by decades and people by continents and oceans. Greta Lee stars as Nora, an immigrant from South Korea to New York City by way of Toronto, who reconnects with an old friend from her youth named Hae Sung, played by Teo Yoo, who was coincidentally already trying to reconnect with her. Their early 2010 Skype calls seem to be drifting toward the romantic side of the aforementioned thin line before they're paused for a reassessment that never comes, and they both continue their lives outside of the bubble they'd constructed for themselves. Eventually, they meet up in person again, but Nora is now married to Arthur, played by John Magaro. A tension amongst all three ensues that raises questions about the nature of the trio's interpersonal relationships, as well as their identities and how they've become the people they are. The strength of Past Lives comes from the way it deftly flirts with ideas such as fate, culture, ethnicity, and especially through its brief but essential opening scene, projection of self. Each idea or subject is teased in such a way that it naturally unravels in front of your eyes without ever seeming contrived or really to even announce itself. Consequently, you are already thinking about each idea before you realize you are, just as happens so often in life. The final result is a sublimely crafted story that only improves with subsequent viewings. From this point on, we may discuss elements of the plot that some would consider spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about the movie now, you may want to come back and listen to this at another time. So, Chuck, what were your initial thoughts on Past Lives?
I really enjoyed it. I thought about it a lot in terms of, I guess, like a type of story, or maybe like a type of genre or something, where I thought about it as like, okay, this is it reminds me of some sort of European art cinema, or maybe even Asian art cinema, like maybe an early Kurosawa or something like that. And I was sort of processing as I was watching, like, this is very simple.
Yeah.
And is it too simple? And I don't believe it is. I think I ultimately came out on the side of that it's not. But I don't know. I watch so many movies now as a kind of research into a time period. And I really watch a lot of older movies and kind of try and gauge the style and the standards of a certain period of film. And so when watching kind of new stuff, and especially new stuff that's simple and elegant like this, it's obviously a very compelling narrative and a really cool idea. But it also is something that I don't fully know what to think, in a way.
Yeah.
It's and I don't I guess maybe I'll just sort of leave it there for now. So
Sure.
I think it's a jumble. It's a
Yeah.
jumble of feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, as I hinted at at the end of the review,
mhm,
I've seen it twice now because I watched it,
right.
I don't know, a month or two ago, and then when we
Mhm,
talked about watching it for this discussion, I was like, I need to watch this again, and I was
yeah.
glad to because I really enjoyed it the first time. But
Mhm.
I do think I was sort of in a similar place of like, not that this is exactly what you were saying, but like sort of like, why do I like this? What is it?
Sure.
What about it? What is good about it? Because it is
Mhm,
um seemingly simple, I think, on the surface. I
mhm.
would push past that though and say it's subtle but deep, I think,
Right.
is what I
Yeah.
think it is. I because like I said in the review too, I think it's like it's not trying to hit you over the head with anything. It's sort of like it just exists for you to observe in a way
Right.
that is refreshing because not a lot of movies are made confidently enough that they trust you to observe what they want you to observe, or even
Yeah.
like kind of like a range of things for you to observe. Because I'm sure that
Mhm.
another person who's going to watch this, as with any great movie, I think, is going to take away something at least subtly different, if not wholly different or dramatically
Yeah.
different.
Mhm.
And that's just like I said, what I appreciated about the movie is that it
Yeah.
did so much with so seemingly little when I'm sure it was actually a lot.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that kind of makes my mind turn on some of these questions is I know how hard it is to make a movie,
Yeah,
and I know how difficult it is to write a movie. So when something like this gets made,
right. There's that
there's
too.
there's a sort of instinct in me to kind of think about the filmmaker and think about the sort of the passion and the dedication
Mhm.
she had to have to tell this story. And
I think confidence. That's what I was saying too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think you
And
really have to have
and
a confidence in what you're doing to like
right.
allow it to be so seemingly simple as you were saying, or subtle as I was saying. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, yeah. And that, one can choose a variety of different ways to make a movie. You can make it short, you can make it or tell a story rather,
Hmm.
make it short, make it a podcast, write a book, TV show, whatever, comedy, drama, whatever. So to sort of make the decisions that she's made, and put something together that is really interesting. I think maybe there's an element of like, in a way, I'm kind of new, like I don't know, like blown away again by the seeing the magician pull the rabbit out of the hat, so
Right.
to speak.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, wow, someone really just like put that together and like made it work. And then, one of the reasons I was so interested in seeing this film is it's really benefited quite a bit from word of mouth.
Yeah.
Um, it's not something that I saw ads for or even knew what it was about. I just kept hearing about it and seeing it written up and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the experience that I was able to have because we were able to go to all those film festivals for a couple years, had also sort of challenge or I shouldn't affects how I see a movie like this because I know I did and I'm sure you did too, like sat in the theater and watched a lot of indie
Yeah.
movies with supposedly simple stories and subtle direction that didn't always hit the mark, or if they did, like especially with stuff we would see at Tribeca, that was like the only place you would ever see it,
Right.
and they like wouldn't get bought or they wouldn't get talked about or whatever, and we would see there was definitely things I saw there that I was like, this is great, and I
Yeah.
don't know why.
And why did no one buy this and put it out? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's also elements of the non like the film business stuff that's maybe going through my mind as well, of like, wow, this is sort of amazing that this came out the other side of all of that,
That's a good point. Yeah.
and has the life that it does, and is getting awards recognition, and people are talking about it and all that sort of thing.
I would really love to see Celine Song get recognized as much as possible at this point, though,
Mhm.
because I think this is one of my favorite movies of the year. And
Mhm.
as we were saying earlier, I think she's just done like sort of a remarkable thing in the restraint that she confidently shows in
Yeah.
filmmaking, that she doesn't feel it seems like she knows she doesn't have to hit you over the head
Right.
with her themes and points and
Yeah,
stuff.
they're it's also impressive that it's her first movie.
Exactly, that's what I mean,
Um,
especially, like, the
yeah.
confidence of a first-time feature filmmaker to
Right.
pull that off. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was just very surprised because for some reason I was like, "Oh, that name sounds familiar," and I must have been thinking of somebody else because I was like, "I've never there's nothing else to have seen," and I mean, maybe some stuff for TV, I think, but,
Yeah,
overall, not much, to sort of go off of, which was really impressive,
right.
that she made that happen.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I mentioned in my review, I thought that
Mhm.
the opening scene kind of I think it, like, subtly pushes the movie to the next level
Mhm.
in a way, 'cause it sets up this, like, very quick framing device of, like, who the hell are these people? What
Right.
is all this? And I just think it's like a masterful stroke, that
Mhm.
I think the movie could have existed without that scene, but it
Yeah.
would have just been like enough less that I think it elevates it so much just for being there. So I don't
Yeah.
know, did it hit you like that, or am I making something out of nothing?
No, I don't think you are. I think that to the point of the film and are sort of speaking of its subtlety, it it provides a way in for an audience that I think does probably things like this all the time, right? You're always out and about and people watching and
Yeah,
kind of guessing at relationships and stuff, and it's definitely a cool way to introduce people to characters from a perspective of audience and not, I
yeah.
don't know, like the omniscient narrator or,
Right,
or
right.
camera or whatever.
And it even
So
set
yeah,
up
I
some
think
like
it's really cool.
stereotypes to kind of like overcome in a
Hmm.
way, you know?
Right. And I wonder how much there is like a thought process of, you know, non-Korean people are going to be watching this,
Yeah,
and, that sort of, kind of let's put ourselves with them right at the beginning and then take it out of themselves and put it into the other characters and that sort of thing.
right.
Um, I think it was probably on her mind because the character is a writer
Yeah,
of, um, like the same subject matter of being an immigrant, and all that kind of goes along with that.
right.
Um, Which is, I remember us talking about what was that movie with Paul Giamatti and Catherine Hahn?
Somehow I knew you were gonna bring this up. Private Life? Was that what it was
Yeah.
called?
Yeah.
About they're trying to get pregnant and
Right.
then end up using his niece as a surrogate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead though.
So yeah, my issue usually is that people write character like at normal, quote unquote, normal characters, and writers make them writers.
Right.
Uh and it's this, sometimes, like, it feels a little too close to home or something, or like a kind of, they weren't sure what other profession to kind of delve into, and the profession actually doesn't totally matter,
Mhm.
so just make them a writer. And I'm not saying that's what's I think the film is sort of autobiographical to a certain degree. um
Private Life, you
So
mean?
no, this one,
This one. I think both. Yeah.
Past Lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes sense to sort of model the character after
Mhm.
herself. Um, but that is a sort of, if there's anything that I was unsure about with this movie, it was some of those indie tropes
Yeah.
that I think you see. And I do think that a lot of indie movies are like made by auteurs, and the main characters are creative in some fashion, whether they're like filmmakers or writers or whatever.
Mhm.
Um and the kind of minutia of their lives is sort of bulldozed over for the sake of this kind of larger story, which I understand the economy of storytelling, and you're not going to go into everything. But it tends to be things that I think about while I'm watching. I'm kind of like, oh, I wonder what's going on there. Um, and the other thing that I wasn't so sure about, the husband character and the way that he was written as being so sort of meek. And
I guess I didn't read it that way, but go ahead.
I think what I realized, I was thinking about it and I was like, what bothered me about that? One thing is that I find jealousy to be a really boring emotion
Mhm.
in film. I just like anytime like someone's like overly jealous, or even like hidden jealousy that they don't want to show or whatever, like I know that it's a good conflict, and it's a good sort of conflict for the actor, it's a good conflict for the story,
Mhm.
but I don't connect to it very much. I'm just like, oh, whatever. I sort of get tired when watching it easily. Um and I was wondering if there was maybe another more sort of off, like unexpected way he could have been,
Mm.
instead of just so sort of like, yeah, I mean, I love you. I'm not sure if you love me all the time. And, you have this guy in your past, and okay,
Yeah. I
whatever.
guess I thought it all
Like,
just seemed
mhm,
so real to me.
mhm,
I don't know. But and I would maybe agree with you, except that I think the ending sells it. I think him
mhm,
sitting on the stoop waiting for her because he knows that she's gonna fall apart shows how
mhm.
close they are and how much he
Yeah,
actually loves her and trusts her, and he was never
yeah.
actually in doubt. It was just, I think that everything that comes up in their private conversations in the movie
Mhm,
seems realistic to, like, if you're in this situation, I think this is the stuff that if you had a comfortable, open relationship with somebody that you could talk about things, you
mhm.
would talk about those things. Like, if you had a more
Right, for
closed off,
sure.
I think it actually shows the opposite in a way
Mhm,
of what you're saying, of like, it shows how unjealous he is, that he can just sort of be like, I'm not sure about things sometimes. And he feels comfortable to say
mhm,
that, you know what I mean? He feels secure
mhm.
enough to be able to say something that like that too.
Yeah, I could see that. I think there's also something about the kind of halting way that he speaks, and the way that they have some of the conversations that, again, is a little bit of, to me, an indie trope. Like, people
Sure.
do tend to talk much faster and over each other. And I mean, not everything has to be like a Robert Altman, Aaron Sorkin,
Yeah.
sort of gab fest. But I do think that, again, kind of in the absence, sometimes it feels like in the absence of a strong choice about something other than that, that's like the default. Like, just let people talk slowly, let them sort of work out their feelings in the moment. Um but I don't, I think everything was done the way she wanted it to be done.
Right.
It's more just like, after you see so many movies, you get sort of like tired
Sure.
of some things, and you kind of hope that
Yeah.
maybe someone would put something more fresh out
Well, this is now
in
reminding
those
me of
ways.
our conversation about Coda, actually.
Hmm.
Where
Our lost conversation about Coda.
yeah, I should actually put that one out.
Yeah.
But where we talked in that conversation, we talked a lot about how that movie hit so many indie tropes, but we both
Mhm.
enjoyed the movie overall. Even though we didn't think it was, like, the greatest movie ever, we thought
Yeah,
it
that's
was,
fine.
like, a good version of the paint by numbers indie feel-good
Yeah,
movie, you know?
right,
And
right.
like, hit all those things in a satisfying way for the most part. I don't think the
Yeah.
movie's I still don't think the movie's amazing. I have no, like I've had no desire to, like, go back to it really. I've recommended
No,
it
I've
to people
never.
who I'm like, "I think you'd like this movie,"
Right, right.
But I feel like in a way, this is like that where it's, like, the best possible version of that thing that can be
Mhm,
annoying, as
mhm.
you're pointing out, but I don't think it is annoying here personally because, like, I think it
Yeah,
pulls it off and it's like, this is what it should be.
right.
This is what people are often trying to do and not actually achieving, you know?
Yeah, and I think that it's I think maybe part of my confusion in a way of what I was speaking to earlier is because of that.
Yeah.
Because while I'm identifying these things that I would normally be like, "Oh, this is sort of old hat," or whatever, it's working.
Yeah, you're not used to
F
enjoying it, Chuck. You have to let yourself
I
enjoy
guess
it.
not. I gotta let myself just roll with it.
Yeah.
Um, or I did enjoy it at a time, and then I saw it so
Yeah,
much
yeah,
that I
yeah,
sort of
exactly.
got like, less into it.
Yeah. Well, I
But yeah.
like, as I was kinda saying before, I do think if you I think it holds up on a second viewing, and it's
Mhm.
like any good movie, you are just able to kind of connect with it even deeper. So I would suggest that maybe if you watched it again, like, that wouldn't be in your head as much because you know what you're getting into,
Right.
and, like, you probably
Yeah.
would find it even more satisfying than maybe you already did. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I can see that. I can see that. I don't rewatch things as much anymore. At least not like new
I
stuff.
hear you.
There was a time where it was like you'd see something you liked and or would see something I'd like and I would see it multiple times
Yeah,
or you know or whatever, but I don't know, maybe there's just so much to see
yeah.
that I'm sort of prioritizing things I haven't
There's a lot
seen.
out right now.
Uh yeah.
But yeah. Do you have any final thoughts on this movie?
I think it's a really good movie and like I said, I think the premise is really cool. This idea of a past, uh, someone you were infatuated with or potentially infatuated with, and this idea of like reconnecting
Yeah,
and
an idea of what could have been.
yeah, and I do like the story structure too. I like that this sort of 12-year, like this sort of middle act or whatever,
Hmm.
where they kind of try to rekindle something, but the distance is too much.
Hmm.
You know, like the gap is too wide, and then by the time that they're able to sort of close it, there, you know, the time has passed. So I do really like that structure, and um, I wonder if it's also a little bit of like a what if, because I think probably everybody has, or a lot of people have, a version
Sure.
of that person. And it's kind of like, well, what if you were able to reconnect and have these conversations that they are able to have? So
Hmm.
I think it's really cool. I hope that, you know, it can be viewed as a sort of universal story. I think it's tough because I thought a lot about the like, um, you know, it there a lot of it's in Korean, but it's not totally. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and they were like, "Past Lives, the foreign film, right?" And I was like, "Well, it's not real. It's just like in a different language."
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like it's not, and it's not all in a different language. So, um, I I I kind of like that element too, where it I think it's very universal, despite being sort of you know, heavy into a non-American culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I think,
Um,
like, in so many cases, a movie like this that succeeds, part of the
mhm,
reason it succeeds is it knows that by being specific, you can make
mhm.
something feel universal.
Right.
Because if you're too vague and wishy-washy about something, it's just, like, not relatable in the same way.
Yeah. Mhm.
But yeah, I think you're right also to point out, like, a lot of people just have, like, a similar story of, like, what could have
Yeah.
been. long
Well, and
distance
it
relationship or what if or whatever. So
and I think the thing too that I just realized is, um, when you think of something like The Farewell, which is also, sort of between two cultures
right,
and, not entirely in English, but some of it is and all this stuff. The sort of a lot of films that sort of have that kind of east to west travel of a person become about like east versus west, or the differences in culture and the differences in um philosophy and life and between the two places. And I think what's really cool about this is it doesn't go into that really. Like,
yeah,
they're sort of just living very similar lives in two very distant, places from each other.
yeah,
And I think that there's something unique about that, because usually a film like this would maybe hammer again. Maybe this speaks to what you were saying about the discipline and the restraint
yeah,
that the filmmaker had to not beat you over the head with something and
yeah,
just kind of let it be.
yeah. I would say that I think the cultural specifics are they come across as if they're incidental, even though I think that they're probably more important than
Hmm.
is at first recognizable to some to people to us, for instance, but
Right.
other people as well.
Sure. Hmm.
But I do think it's obviously they do touch on things, but yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right that it doesn't seem to revolve around those in the way a lot of
Right.
movies would.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's something to that. All right. Well, thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Stereoactive Presents, and thank you to our guest, Charles Hinshaw. The music in this podcast is composed by Hansdale Hsu. My name is Jeremiah Lee McVay. If you like what you hear in the show, please rate and review it in Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that allows that. Doing so helps us to expand our audience, and it's much appreciated. And please follow us wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. Every little bit helps, and like I said, it is truly appreciated. You can also get in touch with us at stereoactivemedia@gmail.com, and you can find more information about this show and everything else that Stereoactive Media is involved with at stereoactivemedia.com.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.